Hi there, Roy here. Here we are again on activating the Sacral Chakra, session 3. And today I want to talk a little bit more about how to engage with the three basic tendencies, three basic experiences of feeling the calmness, and then feeling the pleasure, and feeling the pain of life. And there's a challenge in the balance of staying engaged with them and being able to move through them freely, as opposed to getting attached to them and then fighting with the attachment of those. So I'd like to talk about talk for a bit about the pleasure threshold last week, or last session. I'd like to talk more about the pain threshold. I'd like to talk more about the pleasure threshold this week, and then equally talk about the charge. And there's a scale of charge that we have. And what I mean by charge is the resistance. When we struggle within ourselves, is we resist, and in that we're creating a charge. And that charge is what creates the attachment. So the more I grasp at something, or the more I try to push something away, I'm creating a charge between myself and that thing. And it's like a magnet. It's what makes it stick to us. And in our struggle is the things we're grasping towards is we get attached to them rather than being free in them. And the things we're pushing away is that charge within that, again, is we're attaching to it, even though we're trying to push that thing away. And in that, we're in the constant struggle of it. Where the baseline within ourselves is our ability to experience those three tendencies of being calm, of feeling pleasure, and feeling pain, and that they're the three fundamental experiences that we're going to experience in life, and that we stay fluid and engaged with them. So that's the conversation. That's where we've come to in the conversation. So I'd like to talk about the charge. I'd like to go up the scale of pleasure more, and no doubt I'll talk about the scale of pain more as well, and how to engage in that without attaching to it. And part of that conversation, we need to talk about intimacy and how to engage in ourselves at that level, and how to free ourselves in that. So inhibitions. So intimacy and inhibitions, they go hand in hand. The more inhibitions we have is the more layers we put on ourselves, and in that we can get caught up in the layers, and we lose the intimacy of ourselves. Where in the intimacy of ourselves is we're taking all those layers off, so we've got to take off our inhibitions. And again, the inhibitions that I'm talking about now is the attachments, because we can get comfortable, even in the struggling, we can get comfortable with the struggle and the attachments, and they become like a set of clothes on us, and it inhibits us, it restricts us. So to take off those attachments it allows us to be less inhibited, and it brings us more into our intimacy. And very much about the sacral chakra, it's all about life force. It's all about connecting to that life force consciously. And to do that, that's probably one of the most intimate things that we can experience, is that true intimacy of ourselves and coming into that. So that's the conversation that I'd like to tease out today. But as always, I'd like to do a recap on where we've come from, so it all makes sense, and you can begin to map it together. So let's start with, you'll notice that with each chakra, there's, as I go through it, there's a process that I'm going through in all of them. So you'll notice that the first thing we got to identify is what is the root source? What is the source of the chakra? Where is it? Where do we find that direct experience? And then what is that direct experience? So in the sacral chakra, it's our life force. So now what's the root source of our life force? Well, it's the present moment, is connecting consciously into the moment, is coming into the moment of ourselves, coming into the moment itself. And then in that is then breathing. And as we breathe in the moment, we connect into the life force. And that continual connection into our life force is the feeling of aliveness itself. So the source of our life force is feeling alive itself, is that experience of being alive. And that's our baseline feeling, is what's the thing we feel life through? We feel life through our life force. Well, what does it feel like to be alive? Well, that's feeling itself. It's just a baseline feeling of aliveness. It's feeling. So what's the first thing we feel? We feel alive. So feeling. Then after that, through our life force, there's everything else that we feel, we experience through our senses. It's the living experience of our life. It's like the present moment, and then everything that happens in the moment. So there is the present moment itself, and then there's all the things that happen. There's our life force, and then there's all the things that we experience and feel in our life force. So that's the tapping into the source of it. Now you'll notice part of the process that I go through is there's the source. Now within that, the two things we need to bring into it is awareness, is to be looking at it with consciousness, with awareness itself, and looking directly at it. So that it's not an idea, it's a direct experience. And then within that is connecting into the living experience of it, the fluidity of it, and that brings in the living experience. So the present moment itself is the stillness of consciousness. So when you center yourself into the present moment and you come into the consciousness of the moment, when you come into that pure consciousness, to just absolute consciousness, it's of stillness. It's a timeless state. So in the timelessness of it, it goes nowhere. You remember on other videos, I talk about if you're looking at a window and you're looking at a forest for a year, is for a whole year you stay completely present, you stay completely in the moment, and you're observing the forest. What do you see? And basically you'll see the seasons move through the forest. If you speed it up, then you'll see waves of colors. And it's just like looking at universal energy just moving in motion through the forest, so to speak. And as we mark that motion, we're marking it as time. So you have a day, a week, a month, a season, a year. And we're observing energy in motion. So for a whole year, is you were focusing on that with complete awareness. Is the question I ask people is, well, where did you go in that year? And you went nowhere. You went absolutely nowhere. You stayed absolutely present. So then where did the present moment go for that year? Present moment went nowhere. So the present moment itself is of stillness. And the consciousness of that moment is that pure consciousness is stillness itself. So the moment that we're in right now is exactly the same moment from a billion years ago. From any timeline that you want to measure on the motion of energy, it's always the one moment. And then there's the energy that moves through it. There's the things that happen in that moment. But the moment itself goes nowhere. So it's a point of stillness. And the consciousness is of that. So now as we observe from that place of consciousness of the present moment itself, now we're observing is energy in motion. And as we observe energy in motion, we're tapping into life force itself, universal energy. And then here I am in my body in this one-pointedness of experience. What I mean by that is you could have universal consciousness. And that consciousness is everywhere, but nowhere in particular. So you can't point to it in one place and say, there it is, because it's universal. And when we experience it, it's that state of being. There's no I in it. It's just in a state of being. You got to let go of I to come into the omnipresent state of pure consciousness. So now when we localize ourselves, when we localize ourselves in one place, then we say I. So here I am in this body. Here I am with this consciousness, and that this consciousness can say I. So for the time being, I've localized myself in I, if you understand. So now I have a body. I experience the vitality of life force itself, and that life force is moving through me. So I can have the experience of feeling alive, and I'm feeling alive. And then universally I'm not just alive, I'm universal life itself. I'm life itself. I'm in the unbound universal energy. So there's the source, the present moment, and then we've got to bring out consciousness and energy into that. Okay, so I am present, I am alive. So when I am present and I am alive, I'm now activating my root chakra. Well, not my root chakra, but my sacral chakra. So now I'm feeling alive. Within life, there's three basic feelings we're going to feel. You're guaranteed in the cycle of birth and death is that we're going to feel pleasure, we're going to feel pain, and that There's this wonderful calm feeling of just being neutral, where this neither pleasant or unpleasant is just calmness itself. So positive, negative, and neutral. And as we develop in life, is if life hurts, which it does, is if we struggle with that, is that struggling creates attachments. So we try to push away from pains, but in pushing away from them is we attach to the hurt of it. We attach to the struggle of it. So our ability not to struggle with pain is elementally important to staying engaged in our life force, and not to have our life force being controlled by our attachments. Okay, so now the pleasure is equally the same. Is things can feel very pleasant and we want them, and we can start grasping at them. And the more we start trying to pull towards the pleasure or hold on to the pleasure, is that grasping creates a struggle, and in that there's an attachment to that. And then we talk about the wheel of life and the struggle on it, and it's that pushing away from the pain and pulling towards the pleasure. Some people pull towards the pain and push away from the pleasure too. There's that as well. And then there's the seesaw effect of going between. But it's that constant struggle in that it allows us to, well, it doesn't allow us. It can block us from experiencing the third one, the neutral channel, which is the central channel, the calmness itself. And the calmness in the central channel is where we can begin to find the constant, rather than the constant seesaw and up and down effect and the push and pull. And if we get too caught up in that struggle, is we can shift from that experience of living to a state of survival. So we're all born in a state of living. Kids are just so in the moment, and they're so alive. And then as we develop, is we can begin to attach to things. And if we struggle too much, is that struggle can start to get the better of us. And rather than us feeling alive in ourselves, we can feel that life is buffering us and that we're just trying to survive, is all the peaks and troughs of life. We don't feel like we're in control. If anything, we feel like we've no control, we've no power, we feel disempowered, and we're getting caught up in the struggle of just trying to survive. Okay? So now that's us moving from that beautiful place of connection into the hurt, which is separation. Then we feel the fear and we struggle with it. And then we identify with the pain and the separation. We identify with the separation of things, the separation of ourselves. We identify with the struggle. And then we're in this state of fear and hurt and anxiety. And then we identify with those attachments. And that's how we view life. That's how we view our own life force. And that if the energy is high, well, then we're high. If the energy is low, then we're low. If the energy is good, it's good. If the energy is bad, it's bad. But it's external forces that are perpetually controlling that, and the attachments that we have to that, rather than is centering ourselves consciously in our own life force. And that even though we can walk into a room, we can't control the environment. We meet people in the rooms, we can't control the people. Then there's situations that are going on, we can't control the situations, but we can control ourselves. And we can affect the room, we can affect people, we can affect the situation. Everybody understand that? So now coming back to the center of ourselves, and then beginning to control that, and that we're going to start to engage with just tapping into our life force. So if you remember from the first session, I talked about every time we make a commitment, is we take a slither of our life force and we attach it to that commitment. And then think about how many commitments you've made in your life to date. And then think about all those commitments going off in 100 different directions. After a while, our energy, our life force can feel like it's getting depleted because we're pulled in 100 different directions at once. And then we're moving through these different states all the time, and we're trying to push away from one and pull towards another. We spend so much time lost in the middle, not allowing ourselves to fully experience or engage the experience of our lives. And that's that struggle and that sense of survival. At a physical level in the body, at an emotional level, at a mental level, in the rooms, the people, and the situations of our life, is all that pushing and pulling, all that feeling of separation, is it just our life force just gets split until it starts to feel depleted. And that's when things can start to break down, because if we don't have enough drive within us to maintain our lives, things start to fall apart. So to avoid that, what we'll do is we'll look for external motivations. So we look for things to motivate us. And the more tired we get ourselves, those motivations then need to become bigger. And at one point, if those motivations become so big, they become self-defeating. And then in that is we can start to give up. And what we do is we try play to a point where we take on less commitments. We're trying to manage the ones we have, and that we can get tired and exhausted in ourselves, that we're always playing for safe. We're always going to try and play the safe decision, is to keep ourselves safe and avoid more suffering and hurt. And in that, we can put ourselves in a state of survival mode rather than a state of living. So the question I asked is, what would happen if we called back all our drive, all our commitments? We call that slither of our life force back into the one place. It's not that we're disengaging from all our commitments, it's that we drew our life force back to ourselves. Rather than attaching it to that thing, I hold my life force in myself. I'm still engaging with that commitment. That could be work, it could be relationships, it could be your hobbies, anything at all. Is whatever it is. It's just you're engaging with it from the present moment and the aliveness of it within yourself. So you're in the living experience of that commitment rather than in the managing of the attachment. And then the struggle it takes to be in that commitment when we don't have the energy of it, because we just feel like we're pulling 100 different places at once. So it's a more empowering place to be. Also, what will happen is that we allow ourselves to let go of the commitments we've made that are now empty habits. It's just we forgot to call our commitment back. And I always use the example, or the simple example of smoking. Some people continue to smoke even though it's a completely empty habit. They hate it. There's just nothing left in it for them. But yet they still do it, because there's no other reason to do it at all, because they're completely clear about how much they don't want to do it. But the one thing they haven't taken out of it is their commitment. That attachment to it, that slither of their life force is still attached to it. So that even though there's no other motivation, is they haven't called back their life force. Now think about all the things that you've committed to in your life. And again, another example is your first friend. You might have been like 3 years of age, and you meet your first friend, and you commit to being their friend. You might not even say it in your mind, obviously, but it's that connection that you feel, and we put a little bit of our life force into that connection, and then we just never call it back. And again, we all have old friends or past times in our life, or past moments or places or things, that we can keep the life force in it, where if we call back our life force of it, the commitment, is we can bring that back to the center. It doesn't mean we forget our old life or the old things that happened. It doesn't mean that they're gone. They're still there, and we can still remember them, and we can still experience the living of them. It's just the attachment is bringing our life force back and letting go of the attachment to it. That's all. So it's not like I'm telling you to go around and start dropping things. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's the position with which you hold yourself with your life, and you want to hold your life force in your center consciously. Because when we had that experience last time, it was unconscious. We were kids. We were innocent in it. We were naive in it. We didn't know any better, but yet we had this wonderful, wonderful experience. It was absolutely amazing. And then as we develop in life, we get an intellect and we make choices, or we struggle, is we can start to disconnect from ourselves and feel the hurt of that. And the truth is, that's part of the arc story of life, is we all need to lose ourselves a little bit to find ourselves. That's part of the awakening experience of life. it's built in. It's part of the system, so to speak. So it's not like, oh, this is terrible and God, wish that never happened. And is part of it is it if it didn't happen one way, it was gonna happen another way. And what I mean by that is that for you to fully understand being centered, you have to become uncentered. Because if you're centered but you've no measurement of it, is you'll never really know what it is. You might be experiencing it, but your awareness of it is you never really know it. But the moment you fall off center, then you go, oh, now I know what that is. Because look, now I know what being off center is. Now I know what being centered is. So it's always the way. So now we have to lose ourselves a little bit to find ourselves with our life force. Is we use it unabound as kids. Is like free money. Abundant energy, we're boundless in it, and then as we go through life, is we start to realize all those commitments we make there's a price to pay, because we have to keep maintaining them. And if we start making commitments on commitments on commitments on commitments, at some point it depletes us. And that's part of the experience. We get depleted so that we can now find a way to come back to it consciously. So it's just part of the arc story. It's the way we awaken. It's just the way of it. So now we start to look at, okay, now I've got to figure something out. So now this is about, now how do I consciously activate my sacral chakra, my life force? So we got to look at it clearly and find the source of it. Okay, and a simple way to describe that is think about heightening all your senses. When you heighten all your senses, is you take a breath in, you heighten all your senses, and in that you start to feel that spark, that aliveness, that sense of being turned on. Is that you beginning to activate your central nervous system and just feeling the aliveness itself. Now think about all the things that you now have that attached to in your life. Let's think of the pleasant ones first. Your routine in the day. What's the little things you do at the start of the day to set your day up? And that give you a little pep, and you're attached to them, but they work for you and make you feel a bit nice. Woohoo! Then there's the ways that you limber out in your day. What are the things that you do to move more into your day? And as you're in the peak of your day, what are those things? Who are the people in your life that lift your energy and that you're attached to that every time you're in that experience, it gives you a lift? Where are the rooms that give you that? What are the situations in your life that lift your energy? Now let's get a little bit more specific. Where are the rooms that are the peak rooms of your life? Where are those rooms? What are you doing in those rooms? Who are you doing it with? What's happening? Does that make sense? Now again, it could be the bedroom, it could be the dance floor, it could be going for a walk in the mountains. Does that make sense? It could be playing football, playing golf, anything, sitting around with friends, just sitting in the quietness of yourself. There's 101 ways that can happen. Those moments where you just come into that lovely sense of being and you just feel vibrant and alive in yourself. Okay? So now, what are the rooms where you feel the waning of the pleasure? What are the rooms, the people in the situation that when you're on the wind down, when you're on the calm down, what rooms are you in then? Is anybody in those rooms with you? And what are you doing? And again, it could be those times where it's a Sunday evening and you're just sitting at home, you're just relaxing. You're just taking it easy. And it's that wind down. You feel good, but it's that wind down. It's that settling experience. It's the end of your evening where, like we like to play chess sometimes, or we have a game of chess, and we're playing chess and we're just having a bit of fun. It's just a wind down time, but it's a lovely feeling and it's just a calming energy. And again, those times where you just bring yourself back to that wonderful time where you're just in the peace of it and it just feels beautiful. Now, if you notice, I'm actually describing a yoga practice, centering, limbering, warming and strengthening, cooling down, calming down, relaxation. We have that in our lives. Like you have that energy that energy wave in your life. You have that energy pattern in your life. You have it attached to pleasure. Does that make sense? No different than a yoga session. You have that. We all have it. Now, some people like a lot of centering. Other people like to rush past it. So maybe you don't have very many small, simple little things that give you that nice grounding connection. Some people love to limber in the practice and spend ages there. You have a lot of your time just in a limbering state, where it's a low pleasure, but you can stretch it out. Other people like to rush past that and then jump into the intensities. Some people just won't feel alive until they're doing the intense stuff. They're in those peak things that they go and do HIIT sessions in the gym. They're going to jump out of planes. They got to do all this stuff that's really going to make them feel alive. Or another person is, oh no, that's just way too much. Is their peak moment could be a long walk. It's whatever works for you. Same with the cooling down and the calming down. Okay, so we all have that pattern. Everybody does. So now we also have the same in the pain, because there's 3 basic states we're going to experience in this life. It's going to be pleasant, it's going to be pleasurable, and it's also going to be painful. So now, what are the pains that you have that they're like centering? What are the aches and pains that you have that focus you? What are the pains that focus you? When you get out of bed, and again, depending on your age or an injury that you have, you get out of bed, you have any aches or pains, and that you got to ease, you got to center yourself in them and ease them out. I'll give you another example. Some rooms, you might have a job that's a lot of pressure. It's that you're in great mood, but we go into work. By the time you've got into work, is you're bracing yourself for the intensity of the pressure, because at a mental level, it's stressful, and you got to center yourself in that stress, and then you got to again get on with your day. So there's different situations where it could be a physical pain and an emotional and mental pain, in the sense that there's the struggle and the hurt in it. You really got to, sometimes you got to bite down on the bit and really go for it. Really pay attention to it. No different than is if you're going to go into a yoga session or a gym session or whatever session that's going to be more physical, the limbering out of your pains, is and again, if you're younger, you may not notice so much, but if you're a little bit older, you'll notice that as I get older, my limberings take longer, and that I need to warm up more, to loosen out more, that I can let those aches and pains, the general aches and pains of age, and release a little bit more. So there's a strategy to the way I would do that, if that makes sense. Equally, the peak pains is dealing with the peak pains or the struggle in them, and then there's the calming down pains. A simple example is winding down after work, winding down after an argument, winding down after a strong yoga or gym session where you got to let those aches and pains go, that you can bring yourself back to that space of releasing your pain. So we have our pleasure arc, and then we have our pain arc, and then another one we have is our calmness arc. Our calmness arc. And again, some people you may not know you have one. I asked this in the last session, who's aware of their pain threshold. And again, anytime I ask this in teacher training, everybody knows their pain threshold. Everybody knows this story, the arc story of their pain. When I ask about pleasure, is normally less than half the people know that same story. Now, if I asked you about your calm one, because these 3 basic tendencies, they're playing out all the time. There's not one person who it isn't engaging with. So everybody has a calm arc story as well. It's just a lot of the times, if we're caught up in the push and pull of the pleasure and the pain, is those times when we actually come into the center and the calmness, is a lot of times we're not aware of it, or they don't happen very, 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 very much, or people don't, they're not valued or recognized as much. But there is ways that we come into a calmness. What are the little things that you do that calm you? What are the things you do that limber out, keep you calm? And then those stressful situations, is what are the things that you can do that are the peak of your calmness, your ability to calm yourself when sensations are strong and intense, when life situations are strong and intense. And then when you're in the letting go into the calming down, what's that like? And you're coming into the calmness where you're just back to the peace of it again, is you have that story too. Okay? And there's one more arc I'm going to tell you about, which is the struggle. There's another one where your struggle within staying centered is, whether it's physical, emotional, and mental, whether it's in the rooms, the people, the situations of your life, is the struggle, the charge, and the struggle is the charge. The charge. There's this your struggle with centering yourself, the charge in that, the fight that you have in it, your resistance to it, the struggle with your limbering, and your willingness to be open and let things happen at their own pace. Then when things are strong and intense, is then the fight within that. And irregardless of what level or place, inward or outward. Then there's the letting go. Is are you good at letting go, or do you struggle with it? We all have a certain amount of struggle in our letting go. Some of us let go very fast, others it takes a long time to let something go. And then there's the calming down, our ability to come out of our struggle and bring ourselves back to that sense of peace again. That's lost on some people. They don't get a sense of that. They just feel like the struggle is constantly there. There is no point that they can recognize where they're just in that place of calmness and there is no struggle. Sometimes now it happens, but sometimes the space can be very small and people are not recognizing, they're not seeing that it's there, if that makes sense. But that arc story is there too. So your pleasure arc, your pain arc, your calm arc, and then your struggling arc. Does that make sense? And they're all intrinsically linked together. And the one that changes the difference between an attachment and a being in it, and the attachment is where we're in the struggle, is the struggling arc, the charge arc of the struggle. Because when we struggle, we're attaching to the pleasure and the pain. Does that make sense? We're in the fight of it. And that's the hurt story. When we're in the truth story, then we're in the connection of it. We're in the being of it. So I can be in the pleasure and I'm just in the being of it. I'm not trying to struggle with it. I'm open and free in it. Equally, when I'm in my hurt, I can be hurt and I'm authentically in the hurt. I'm just being that hurt. I'm not fighting with the hurt. I'm just authentically in it, and I'm staying connected to it. And the pleasure and the pain and the calmness, they just move through us. Just like these tendencies in life, these energies just move through us as we experience life. And the more we can be authentically in them, is the less we struggle in them. And we're moving from the hurt story of the struggle to the connection and the truth story. Okay, so with no struggle, we're coming to the peace of them. So we got to then look at a few things. And again, this is within our life force, is to truly feel the aliveness of ourselves. It's coming into the intimacy of that. And coming into the intimacy of that is our willingness to put down the inhibitions, if that makes sense. And the inhibitions are part of our protection, is part of our defense mechanism, is part of our struggling. Because in the inhibitions, we can, no, I don't want that, and I'll have this. It's a form of protection. And it stops us from being free in ourselves. So when we're uninhibited, then we're in the freedom and the space of ourselves. And we can be in the intimacy of ourselves. Now, again, this isn't the Screaming 60, so I'm not telling you all to take all your clothes off and start running down the road naked. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there's a willingness to look at the struggle. And then a nice, easy way to look at that is to look at our inhibitions. And then a nice, easy way to let go of our inhibitions is just to come back to a sense of intimacy that's at a very base level. We go right back to the source. We're going to go back to the source and bring it right down to the fundamental experience. Think about it as a child. Is the child comes in and is being hit with this source and they're just totally open to it. Life itself. And they're like a sponge. And how focused are they? And how much are they receiving that life force? They're so in it. Beautiful. And then they'll do three things. They'll laugh, they'll smile, they'll cry, and then they'll be completely calm. They're just in that state of absorption. They're in that receptive state. They're the three basic things that they do. Now, for somebody to be consciously and emotionally intelligent in themselves is to have access to those three basic states freely. And that if we're uninhibited in those three basic expressions, is that they will allow us to read and experience all our attachments, all our inhibitions, and slowly let the attachment and the inhibition go. And what I mean by that, if we're struggling with something, is we're in a state of fear. If we can experience the fear in an intimate way, in an uninhibited way, it'll allow us to see it more clearly, feel it more clearly, and not struggle with it. It'll allow us to experience the hurt more freely in an uninhibited way, that we feel our hurt, and in an intimate way allow us to really begin to absorb into that hurt. And it's not to destroy the hurt, it's to release the hurt. So again, it's our ability to be like holding a baby, I said before, is holding ourselves firm enough that we feel secure, soft enough to allow the baby to be comfortable and feel safe and secure, but also be able to breathe and move. So it's the way that we hold this space for ourselves is vitally important. And that just allowing ourselves to come back into the intimacy of just feeling, and just feeling ourselves, and just feeling our life force. So our ease of smile, our ease of crying, is that ease of calmness, is all they are a form of release. They're an expression of release. It's the willingness to soften into those that frees us from the attachment. So crying is a release. Smiling, laughing is a release. And it brings us into that beautiful calmness within ourselves, which is a release also. And we are releasing ourselves into that beautiful direct connection of our life force. We're in the living moment of ourselves. If we struggle with it, then we get attached to the hurt, we get attached to the suffering, and we're fighting the pleasure and pain battle. We want to put that fight down of pleasure and pain. So we've got to treat them equally. And then as we treat them equally, is we're holding the space so that, remember, all kids want to be seen. All kids want to be felt. We all want to be seen. We all want to be felt. So holding that space for ourselves, where we can see ourselves, where we can feel ourselves. And when we feel and see our struggling and our hurt, is sometimes it's going to make us cry, sometimes it's going to make us laugh. We see our connection, we feel our connection, and we are seeing the pathway that takes us through pain to pleasure. And when we stop fighting the pleasure and the pain, is rather than them pulling away from each other, which is disempowering, they come together and they empower us. They tell a story that brings us back to our center and reconnect us to our life force and the living of ourselves. And that's empowering. Energy rises. So we're binding the three tendencies together into the one channel. And that's where we find the permanent joy of ourselves, is being able to stay open to the pleasure and pain of life and letting it move through us. Okay, now, I said this in the last session as well. I'm not promoting go seek pleasure or pain, is go looking for pain and find reasons to be painful. That's not what I'm saying. But pain is going to happen at times. There's no doubt about it. So it's our ability to release pain means we're not afraid of it. And when we're not afraid of the pain, is we can then begin to live a life where we're in the living of our life. We're mindful of our boundaries, and we're mindful of our fear, because our fear tells us our boundaries. You know, here you're safe, and you go over there, that's not so safe. That's an important thing to do. When we look at that fearlessly, is then we can make choices, fearless choices, based on careful observation. And that it allows us to engage with that. The risk of living, as I said before, is living as a risk, is avoiding the risk means we're going to try and play a safe life. And then we play a safe life, at some point we realize we're not living anymore, we're just trying to survive. So if we're going to live, is we've got to accept the risk of life, and the risk of life is death. And then the risk of life is pain. Equally, the risk of life is pleasure. And then the risk of life is experiencing the fullness of life and experiencing the fullness of ourselves in it. Living the complete life, the fullness of that and what that is, and stepping into that all the time. So fear is a close companion who is a communicator and a carer rather than the enemy. Does that make sense? Is pain is part of our companion. It allows us to experience the full range of life. We're not looking to take risks that are going to cause harm, but we just know that that's a potential. And that we hold that in our minds with awareness, and we make choices that are the best choices for us at any moment. But we understand the risk of that. And we make mindful choices rather than fear choices, or even worse than fear choices, careless choices. Is ignoring the risks and just making choices in a careless way. So again, having a really honest look at the way life is and the baseline experiences, and then finding a way to bring them all together where we can find the balance of them. Okay, so now one of the things we're going to look at again is the pleasure and the range of scale of pleasure, the range and scale of pain, and then the range of charge. Okay, so I'm waffling on a bit. I know it's great, but I'm still waffling on. So let me be a little bit more specific. I'm going to talk about the field of charge, the struggling, and then the field of it on a scale of 1 to 10, where I'm basically I know you're probably asking right now, okay, I've got what you said, Roy, you've repeated it a couple of times. How? Tell me the how it is a bit more. I want to know more about the how. This is how. On a scale of 1 to 10, where think about in your life, in your body, your emotional self, your mental self, then the rooms of your life, the people in your life, the situations, the responsibilities you've got in your life, and then there's the past, the present, and then even the future stuff. 1 on this scale is all the things, all the struggles that you have that are they're mild. They're just 1. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the peak, 1 is mild. And how many struggles have you got in 2? Where the struggles of 3, where the intensity is getting more, 4, 5, 6. So where you're going 6, 7, 8, where your real struggles with life is 8, 9, 10. So now think of it like a pyramid. And think of it like a force field. You're looking at all that inward and outward, your life inwardly and outwardly. You'll have a lot of little ones. And each one of them is like a little dot, like a little knot. Does that make sense? So all the dots is all those little tension moments. Where 2, there's more. Or maybe not as much. 3, you can have a lot, but maybe a little less. 4, you'll have less of them, but they're more intense. 5, you'll have less, but more intense. So by the time you get to 7, 8, or 9, you'll have very few struggles at 9, but the ones that are there, the real intense ones, they're really strong. So the field of charge is the struggle and the intensity of the struggle. So when you're up right at the top, there's few of them, but as you go down, there's more and more and more. Okay, so now think about the field of 3, the charge of 3. Think about all the little dots. So all the little dots, all the little small aches in your body that are of 3. All the little small emotional aches that are 3, the things that annoy you. They're not that important, they just annoy you. Same with your mind, the little negative thoughts and the frustrations in your mind that are not that important, but yet they're just bugbears, they get at you. Equally, all the little things think about all the rooms of your life. What are all the little things that annoy you? And then all the people in your life, what are all the little things they do that annoy you? Then the situations is family situations, work situations, career situations, whatever, sports club situations, yoga situations, whatever it is, all the things that you engage with in your life, those situations, what are all the little things there that annoy you? So now you're getting the idea of, on a scale of 3, you could have an awful lot of dots. You could have an awful lot of dots in there of things that just bother you. Okay, and we're going around engaging with those all the time. So now think about the scale of 3 as as a charge. So if you're resisting 1, it's a little. 2 is a little bit more. 3, you're a little bit more. 4, a little bit more. 5, 6, by 7, it's like, raw, you're really. 8, you're like, raw, you're really fighting with it. It's that push and pull within you is getting stronger and stronger. So back to 3. So 3 is just a little bit. Okay. Now there's the feel of 3, and then there's 100 little things in it. What would happen if you took the charge of 3 out of you, out of your body, out of your energetic body, out of your mind, your mental body? As you went about your day with the people and the situations, is all those things that used to bother you with that field of 3, because you're not engaging with that charge of 3, what happens to all the little dots? Think about the field of 3 and you turn it off. All the dots just drop out. They just drop out because you're not attaching. That charge is maintaining the attachment. So when you stop that struggle of 3, all those charges drop. So all those resistant points that you're finding is they're not there anymore. So lots of tensions just drop out of the field. Okay? Do you see how powerful that is? So how do you do that? Do you see how powerful that is? Very powerful. How do you do that? Now, something will happen. You drop them all out. Some will go and not return. Others will return. You do it a few times, you get used to it, and then you get used to dropping that field of 3, and most of them will drop out at 3. But some will keep returning. The ones that keep returning, what does that tell you? That tells you that they're the ones that you need to look at. They're the ones where there's a real issue, because it keeps returning. It's a real issue, and you need to look at that. Because those that keep returning to that field of 3, they're the ones that you're going to find them probably moving into 4, 5, and 6. They're the issues that you need to go, okay, this is there's something really going on here. There's a deeper hurt going on here. There's a deeper something going on here. I need to figure that out. And you look at those, and you go into those, and you start to understand what's going on there, and begin to untie that knot. That you begin to release it out. That you start to literally clear out the energy channels at a physical level. Clear out the knots in your body. Clear out the energetic knots in your energetic body, your emotional body. Get rid of all those stresses and strains. Clear out the mental body. Start to tidy up your patterns of thought and the attunement of them. Getting the knots out of them. Getting the inconsistencies out of them. Getting the charges and the friction out of them. No different than, now think about this, you've dropped the field of 3. So now you're in a room in your life, with a person, in a situation, somebody does something that would normally bother you. And rather than you reacting the way you would normally react, is you do something different. You respond. And you find yourself responding rather than reacting. And something new has happened there. And you've brought in a new pattern, a new response. But it's not because you've tried to force it, it's because it's naturally happened. Not because you're trying to change your behavior, it's because you've taken the charge out of yourself and you're coming back into your natural spontaneity. Your natural intelligence is rising, and the way you would spontaneously engage in the living of it is you're setting new patterns. And it's spontaneously happening. And now you're in the living of that moment rather than the reliving of the hurt all the time. You're just reliving the same irritation over and over and over, like a record. Not even thinking about it. It's just like photocopy after photocopy after photocopy. Is now you've put that down. Now you're living that moment again, and you're bringing more and more of your life force into your body and centering it in your sacral, and then just begin to move it through your body, through your emotional and mental body. Then it's how you communicate it, engage with it in the rooms, the people, and the situations of your life. It's very, very powerful. So now dealing with that field of charge is one thing we're going to start to look at more. We need to get into that. Now, how do we do that? So rather than trying to deal with 100 little things, is just deal with the one thing. Think about the 3 basic states that you're going to experience in the tendency: pleasure, pain, and calmness. What would happen if you just started to practice feeling those states for themselves? And how do you do that? Well, what's your release response to them? Smiling, crying, and just being calm. What if you start to practice as you breathe and be in your body, just feeling the pleasure and smiling with it, feeling the ache, crying with it. And when you feel neither the pleasure or the pain, and you're just in the calmness of it, just be in the calmness of it. And then sometimes in your smile, in the pleasure, you might want to cry. Sometimes in the pain, you might want to laugh. And sometimes you're in moving through them, you're just in the calmness. Whether it's pleasure or pain, you're just flowing through the calmness of yourself. You're binding all those three tendencies together. Rather than treating them as separate, you bind them together by your willingness to release yourself. Release yourself into your pleasure, release yourself into your pain, release yourself into your calmness. And you're letting go of all the attachments. And as you get skilled in that, you start to go through the layers of the field of charge. You're not trying to have 100 battles at once. You just focus on the one, is raise up that connection and your attachments go down. The more you free yourself and just be in the pleasure, be in the pain, be in the calmness and just be it, your attachment goes down. So the field of charge starts to disengage itself. You're freeing yourself from the suffering of it. And you're coming more and more into your life force. And you're drawing all your life force back into the one place. You're not just activating your sacral chakra, you're now drawing energy up through it. And you're beginning to bring aliveness into it, and begin to radiate it. And then you want to bring it up and you want to begin to allow it to radiate abundantly in yourself. Okay, and that's the pathway we're going on. Okay, so now let's talk about the pleasure, because this is part of it. As the energy is rising, is we start coming into a different type of joy. Okay, so now to understand this is we also need to understand pleasure, the arc of pleasure, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the arc of pain as well. So maybe we'll do a bit of pain first. Is until, like if I break the bone in my arm, yeah, and this is probably not going to, I'm not saying this very nicely, but I'm going to say this with you. Imagine a pressure being applied to your arm and it's getting more and more painful. And at one point, let's say my arm breaks, the bone breaks. But before the bone breaks proper is I'm feeling waves of sensations, and the intensity is getting stronger and stronger. And it's getting more and more painful. But really, if you pull it back to, it's just a stronger and stronger sensation. And that it's painful, but really pain is just levels of intensity. It's the level of intensity with which we can experience something. And that the pain can come on, and then if the bone breaks, now we've got to heal. Now we're in proper injuring ourselves. But if you think about it, most pain is just going through those levels of intensity. And the more calm we can stay with it, is the more we can manage and deal and let the pain move through us rather than attaching to it. So think about feeling discomfort and just being able to stay calm and grounded in it. So part of that is the willingness to move into a discomfort and then ground ourselves in. Move into a discomfort and ground ourselves in. Move into layers of intensity and ground ourselves into it. Not because we want to feel pain, not because we want to cause ourselves harm, is because we're learning the ability to release pain. And I said this on the video last time, is think about by the time you've healed 2 or 3 pains in your body, you'll have figured out how to do it consciously. So then you're not so afraid of pain. You're not so, you can release it. So it allows us to engage with the risks of life, and that looking at the clear boundaries and making choices that are careful and mindful, knowing that we're also taking a risk. And again, that's living. And we're doing that within the full scope of knowing all the consequences. Okay? So if you think about it from a business point of view, or any situation, life situation, is you look at the worst case scenario. And if you can take the worst case scenario and still continue to do what you're doing, it's probably a good choice. Because if you look at the worst case scenario, you go, if that happened, everything will be destroyed. Well, then that's a wrong choice. That's a risk not worth taking. Okay, so you wouldn't invest all your money on a big gamble. Listen, it's a risk not worth taking. Is is unless you knew it was guaranteed 100%. Again, they're not they don't happen very often. So you got to know the risk you're taking, and then you got to look at the consequences, and then within that is you got to ask yourself: is if the worst case scenario happens, can I still continue doing what I'm doing? Is it a risk worth taking? Okay, and part of that is knowing the hurt of it. If this happens, it's going to hurt. Okay, can I still continue on after that? Yes, I can. So it's the willingness to look at those strong sensations in the body. Look at those strong sensations emotionally and mentally. Look at the strong sensations in the rooms of our lives, with the people, with the situations of our life, and that we're incrementally increasing our ability to hold those strong sensations and to stay calm in them, to not fight them or get attached to them, but just to let them move through us. And some of those strong sensations we recognize as painful. It's painful. And some of those sensations, strong sensations, are pleasurable. Okay, and I'll give you a simple example, is falling in love. And then falling in love to a level of intensity that you never felt before. And then becoming afraid of it because it's just so strong. That's like you could feel like you're losing your ground in it, or it's drawing more out of you than you've known before, and you're moving into the unknown of yourself. And again, if we fight that or brace in it, is it can get in the way. So that's an amazingly beautiful experience to have. But again, if we fight with it, and we struggle with it, is again, it takes away from the quality of the experience. What we're doing is we'll pull it back down to a level that we can manage. Just as an example, I could give a simple one about how good do you allow yourself to feel, and what would happen if you allowed yourself to feel a little bit better. The example I gave last time is somebody who's worked hard and achieved all their goals in life, but yet still isn't happy. And quite possibly my example is that they've achieved all their goals in life, but they haven't figured out how to actually enjoy it. Is the limit with which, the pleasure with which they allow themselves to feel is limited. So no matter how much happens, how much they achieve, it's still not enough because they haven't figured out how to actually have the fullness of the experience on themselves, to live the fullness of joy of that, if that makes sense. Okay, as examples. So there is the struggle, and then there is the strong sensations, and there will be the pleasure, pain, and then the pleasure. Okay, and their ability to take the pleasure and the pain allows us to hold a stronger energy charge within ourselves, a stronger field of energy that we can feel our aliveness, that we can hold our ground in it and feel the fullness of that. That we can hold our ground in it and feel the fullness of that. Okay, so that's what we're looking to do. Okay, so now think about I love giving the sex metaphor here for a couple of reasons. One, it's brilliant to describe the arc of pleasure, because the start and the whole peak of it, and then the calming down of it. Yeah, so it's just perfect for that. And also, it's a wonderful opportunity to talk about the difference between the sex of it and the sensual of it. There is the sacral chakra, and there's the sensuality of the aliveness, the intimacy of that, and then at a gross level, there can be just the sex of it. Does that make sense? And the attachment to that. Now, if you think about the attachment is I'm moving into these higher peaks, is we can attach our life force and it can get caught in different attachments. So think about the addictive nature of the sacral chakra, of the high pleasure and the high pain. So again, sex is one, drugs, attention, what are ones that are? Well, let me simplify it to this, is is when we strongly attach our sacral chakra to anything, it can become addictive because of the strong energy within it, the strong life force within it, and the attachment to that is it can become very powerful. It can become very, very strong. So anything we do that with, I'll give you an example. Some people can really attach their life force to suffering itself. And it's only when they're in the highest of suffering or somebody else in their life is in the highest of suffering that they feel most alive, that they're like superheroes around suffering because they've attached their life force to that. So now that's wonderful. The only problem is that it requires suffering for them to feel alive. So some people love being in that state of suffering. They feel most alive in it. Or they need people in their lives that are suffering so that they can feel alive in the support of that. And again, that can be an addiction. Is anything that we attach to, that the attachment takes over and it becomes repetitive and it starts to affect the quality of life or run our health down or destroy other things in our lives, it's that addictive nature. It's that attachment to that. So, and that can happen in a myriad of ways, 100 different ways, if that makes sense. So now the challenge is that how do we increase our aliveness? How do we increase the abundance of life's experience? And then the challenge is not to get attached to it, but to come into the being of it. That's the challenge, is the being of it. And again, it's that shifting from, and as the sacral, it's that shifting from the sexual to the sensual. And to the sensual is to the intimacy. And it's in the intimacy is where we find the calmness and the softness and the connection, which stops the aggressive attachment. Because if you think about attachment, it's tight, it's aggressive. Where when we come into the softness of things, is we're in the fullness of it, is we come into the connection. So intimacy is really, really important when it comes to the sacral chakra. And the sensualness of it is the transmuting of the energy. And a beautiful way to describe this. And again, let's start using the sex analogy. Yeah. So when you get turned on, sexually get turned on, is what happens to all the senses. Is that they heighten up. All our senses heighten. Okay. Now take the sex out of it. Now we're in a heightened state of awareness. We all have little rituals in our day that heighten our senses. It could be your first coffee in the morning. It could be going out and getting a walk for half an hour before you go to work. It could be 101 different things. It's that thing that gives us a little pep. Now, what would happen, and we're going to do this in the practice today, if we just sat and just heightened our senses and just switched on, just turned our sacral chakra on, turned our life force on, and just let ourselves feel that radiant feeling of our senses heightened. And then we get into the sensuality of it. And then we get into the intimacy of it. And then we don't do anything with it other than just be in it. And just feel that lovely connection and that lovely glow, a lovely radiant glow of our life force. And really coming into the intimacy of that within ourselves. And then how sensual it is our touch becomes. And what I mean by sensual is that when you touch something, is you're really touching it. When you look at something, you're really looking. When you're listening, you're really listening. And that you're in the intimacy of it. You're looking directly. You're listening directly. You're feeling directly. It's an open and engaged experience. Now, even in that little description there, you can understand the intensity with which that can be felt. Even just that. If we're not used to it, first coming into that can be very powerful for a person. Because if we're moving away from inhibitions, is then we're not protecting ourselves so much. And then if we move away from inhibitions, we're also letting go of the attachments, the restrictions. So if we're starting to come into that center of ourselves where we feel our aliveness and the sensual intimacy of it, is a lot of people, there might not be something that they've ever experienced, as an adult is you might never have experienced that. So coming into that can be very powerful. It's very healing. And just coming into the connection with that inner selves. Okay? It's beautiful. So now, what happens in foreplay? Think about foreplay is the sensuality is increasing. All the senses are heightening. The energy is starting to move, and the energy is starting to flow a little bit. So everything becomes a lot more sensitive. So again, I take the sex out of it. Now think about engaging with that way in your life. And a beautiful example is, let's say you play the piano. Imagine playing the piano with that type of sensuality in the touch and the intimacy of playing the music. Is you're not just using your fingers. Your whole central nervous system is the experience. Is you and the piano just merged together. The sound that comes from it, you are that sound. You're just in the fullness of it. And there's that beautiful bonding of your energy and then the energy of your environment. And again, what you're doing in it, playing the piano. But you could be doing that walking down the street. I think a lot of people who love forest walks understand what that is. Is that at a certain point in the walk, is you're in the flow of it, and you got things going, and you're breathing, and you notice that your breath is much fuller because you can really feel the spaciousness of the space around you. Your eyes see a greater distance. You could be on the side of a mountain. Is that the whole spaciousness and lightness of the space comes in, and you really begin to feel more energy, and your mind starts to sparkle a little bit. And there's that beautiful connection between yourself and your own life force and your environment around you. That's the sensuality and the intimacy of that experience. And it's letting go of the inhibitions, is letting go of those restrictions. So again, there's lots of ways that we do this all the time. Is now think about just doing it just for its own sake. Is rather than needing to walk on the mountain or playing the piano, is what would happen if you just come into that experience in yourself. You just come into it, you just were breathing it in yourself. And then you did it and you allowed yourself to feel the three basic tendencies. Is you were sitting and swaying in yourself, and notice what you feel. Again, I'm slipping into a practice here, but that's fine. I'm just going to keep talking, yeah? Is now think about as you sway, is you find those beautiful sensations in your body. Now just allow yourself to feel them. Rather than trying to control them and attach to them, you're just allowing yourself to feel the sensations in your body. And you're just feeling them. That's all they are. If you find you're swaying and you notice aches in your body, is you're just allowing the ache to be there. Is you're not doing anything with it. You're not pushing it away. You're not attacking it. You're just allowing it to be there. So the body is the space you're moving in. And within that is you're holding that space open with awareness. Remember, you all want to be seen, and you're holding that space open and you're just feeling what you're feeling. We all want to be felt. So whether it's pleasure or pain, is we're just feeling it. Now what I want you to do is then just be open to feeling it calmly. The intention is to understand, not to attack, not to change, not to modify. It's just to feel what it is, and then just let it be. And let it fully express itself. And then as we do, it's just allow yourself to be in that. And then there's just the willingness to smile. If you feel like smiling, is allow yourself to smile. If you're just sitting there and you're in the calmness of it, well, just be in the calmness of it. If you feel like you want to have a little cry, is just let yourself have a little cry. And what I mean by that is that you are going to feel as you move in your body and just let yourself feel what you're feeling, is you're releasing yourself into it. You're allowing it to move through you and you're releasing yourself to let it move through you. So in that is you're just releasing in the smile. You're releasing in the cry, you're releasing in the calmness. All you're doing is releasing in the space. So this one space that you come into, this beautiful connection in yourself as you breathe, is you're just releasing yourself into that beautiful connection. And then I want you to breathe. a little bit into your navel, a little bit into your rib cage, a little bit into your upper chest. Just breathe. You're going to exhale, and again, your own time, a little bit in your navel, your rib cage, and your upper chest. And just let the breath flow nice and easy. And then notice that if you slow your breath down ever so slightly, just ever so slightly, that you find a beautiful pause at the end of your exhale. There's that moment of transition, moment of pause, then you begin to inhale. At the peak of your inhale, without breathing tightly, just breathe easy to the peak. It's a moment of pause, and then you begin to exhale. So just breathing nice and slow and calm. Feel a bit of movement in your navel, your rib cage, and your upper chest. There's a moment of pause at the peak of the exhale, at the peak of the inhale. And in that, when you come to the pause at the end of your exhale, I want you to stay a couple of moments longer, just a moment or two longer. The same when you come to the pause at the peak of your inhale, just a couple of moments longer, and still in this way. Now, in those pauses, you find those beautiful moments of stillness. It's like coming deeper and deeper into the calmness. It's the central channel. So you have the inhale and the exhale, but in the middle of those, you have the moment of pause. It's the central channel. So you just let yourself sway and connecting more and more into the calmness. Now, a lot of times when you inhale, it's all about the positive energy, it's the openness, it's the expansion. As you exhale, it's that letting go. It's about letting go of tension, letting it release. So it's almost like you'll hear inhaling the positive, exhaling the negative. Inhaling the pleasure, exhaling the pain. And again, when you're happy, is we take a big breath in and we laugh out. Okay, when we're in pain, we go ha, ah, ah, it's the push out. Ah, it's a push out. There's the pain. Ah. When we laugh, ha ha ha, ah, ha ha ha, ah. Okay, literally that's what it is. That's what it is. So now just allow yourself to treat both equally. Whether you're feeling something pleasant or something a little unpleasant, is just let yourself be fluid in the body, fluid in your breath, easy in the pauses, and you're just observing. You want to watch, you want to see, you want to feel, you want to be, and then in that, you find yourself in the calmness. If you're spontaneously calm, then let it be. If you're spontaneously smiling, let it be. If you're spontaneously crying, let it be. And just feeling that beautiful sense of feeling itself. Whether you're in the pleasantness, feeling. Whether you're in the pain, feeling. Whether you're just in the calmness itself, feeling. Constantly feeling. And then notice the heightened sense of awareness, the sensuality of it, the connection. Notice the intimacy of it. It is very, very intimate. It really is. It's revealing. It shows you to you. And just settle into it. And there can be different types of discomfort in that. It might be physical, but it might be emotional, it might be mental, it might be just, we can resist to it. Is if you feel that resistance, soften into it, and then release into it. Whatever way that comes. Some people will smile uncomfortably. Some people will furrow their brow, soften in, release in it. Some people will just get very calm. Just let themselves be in that connection. And just keep exploring it and breathing. And in that, part of what we're doing is we're calling back our life force. The more you feel that beautiful breath and the aliveness in it, the connection and that beautiful sense of feeling aliveness, it's like a callback. You're doing it consciously. So you're calling back all your commitments, all those slithers of your life force. You're calling them all back into the one place. And some will come back and they'll be full of joy. Some will come back and they'll be full of hurt, or a mix of both. Some will come back very calm. And what you're doing is you're calling back all your life force, and you're just bringing it back to that place of connection, that lovely place of oneness. As we do, we're letting go of all the struggle in it, all the fears. Slowly but surely, as we're feeling more alive in ourselves, more radiant, less fearful. And then we're slowly letting go of the hurts. And as we're letting go of the hurts, again, we start to feel more of the connection and less of the hurt. And even in the connection, we can experience the pain of things. We can experience the pleasure of things. We do not have to leave our life force to feel the pleasure and pain of life. We can be in the calmness of it. We're binding them together. And that we understand our pleasure, we understand our pain, and we treat them both equally. So it's just increasing that beautiful sense of feeling. And every time we need a release, don't overthink it. You don't need to think in this practice. What you need to do is just release. So you're either going to smile, you're going to laugh, maybe you'll have a cry or a little weep, or maybe you just find yourself going very, very calm, very still in yourself. And then the more you move through, remember the field of charge, where if you release the field of 3, all those tensions drop out, is as you move through it more, you'll notice that the more you smile, the more you cry, the greater your ability to let go of the charge. And think about this. Think about think about all the little things that we can be irritated by. And then think about all through our life how much that irritation has just triggered us. And then it pulls at our day. It just pulls. We're doing the normal stuff in life, and these little irritations just keep pulling at us. Imagine just not getting so irritated. That irritated part of yourself, you let go of the irritated self. And that irritated self came more to a calmness. And then that irritated self came more to a place of joy. So the perception of that irritated self now changes, because that irritated self has let go of the struggle and now views things a little bit differently. So rather than looking at things as a problem, is you just start to see opportunities, you start to see possibilities. And then that irritated self, rather than stepping into the same pattern of irritation, steps into responses, all those possibilities. And we're just opening up little moments of newness of ourselves. And you might find that rather than being irritated, is you find yourself just being a little bit more playful. Because you're just a bit more creative, in yourself in those moments. So you turn those moments of irritation and bother into moments of playfulness, of a sharing of the moment and the communication and the joy of the moment, rather than the struggle and the hurt of the moment. To do that, we have to allow ourselves to come into that place of playfulness, because our sacral chakra is very much about our life force. So it's our willingness to engage with the life force and the radiance of it. So, and it's full of energy. So there's a willingness to engage. And what way do you want to engage? Well, and creatively, it's our life force. We want to engage creatively. So if we're going to engage creatively, then you have a lot of fun. And that have a lot of fun in the mundaneness of life and the normalness of life, it's just a willingness to be a little bit playful. Because you still communicate, but you do it in a playful way rather than in a wagging the finger way. And it's just really, really nice that we start to be playful with ourselves first. And one of the beautiful things to be playful with first is our own sensuality, the feeling of ourselves, and then the intimacy of that is getting comfortable with our own intimacy. And then in that is getting comfortable and being playful with our willingness to smile and our willingness to cry. So think about, I have this lovely image, remember the times, we've all would have had this experience, either in ourselves or we would have seen it in somebody, where a little child cries and they're trying that on a little bit, so they'll put on the tears, and then you just check with them, are you sure? Teasing them a little bit, again, be a little bit playful with them. And then at one point, rather than them crying, they just snap out of it, they just start laughing, just go, no, it's okay. I was only trying it on. Does that make sense? Or I was playing at crying, if that makes sense. And they catch themselves and it's a funny moment, or you catch yourself and it's a funny moment. So the point I'm trying to make is what would happen if you did that with your willingness to release, and to release in a tearful way, or your willingness to smile, to release in a playful way, and that you just allow yourself to explore them in that creative, safe, playful way, and that you're being uninhibited. You're letting go of some of your inhibitions, and the freer you get with your willingness to release, and to release with the 3 tendencies, then you'll find yourself engaging with life in a much more creative and playful way, and that you don't get so caught up in the attachments. And even a small amount of this feeling of life force and living within ourselves can be a profound experience, because even a little bit of it is absolutely beautiful. And that we go, wow, this is the way it could be. This is the way I could be. Just even a little bit of it. I could feel like this as a norm. I could feel myself like this as a norm. This intimacy becomes my normal way, so that it's not a special thing. It's just a direct experience I have of myself. And I can go about my day and enjoy the experience of my day, knowing that some of it's going to be pleasant. Some of it's probably going to be a little bit painful or uncomfortable. And that I know how to release that and also stay connected to my life force and stay engaged in it. And that I can be very creative and playful in that. I could have that. That could be the way. That would be beautiful. We can make this very, very complicated. And let's focus on all your hurts and all your struggles. Let's figure out how to release them all. And at some point, somewhere down the road, they're all sorted out, and you figured yourself out. You come to this point where you go, oh, okay, now I feel peaceful after all that. Or you can just come back to that beautiful, simple connection and go right to the source with awareness, feel the energy, understand there's going to be 3 basic sensations that you're going to experience, and then learn how to release those in you and bring it right back to the way you did it when you didn't even have a brain to think about it. And I mean, like when a child. And if you think that I'm being, I'm not trying to be rude there, but my point is, that is the most natural way we do this. It's not, oh, that's the way a child would do it, so I must find another way to do it. No, that's how you do it. Now, the fact that you do it mindfully, the fact that you do it with awareness is very, very different. The release of it can be done much more creatively and in a much more engaged way. So basically, you don't have to walk around smiling all the time or crying all the time. Is once you get used to being in the tendencies and being able to release them, you could be in the spontaneity of yourself, because you're not getting caught in the attachments. But at a baseline, it's like you consciously learning how to cry with ease, without a charge, without inhibitions, to smile at ease, without a charge, without inhibitions, because that's naturally how we are. And that the more you can do that in your personal space and connect into that beautiful, sensual, intimate self that is uninhibited, now you're finding that source of yourself and the aliveness And then you practice that. No going up and trying to now attack the charge of 10 and getting rid of them. Stay at 1. Feel all the simple little struggles in your life, those little resistances of 1, 2, and 3, and just practice your willingness to smile and cry with them. And just get into that practice, get used to it. And at one point, you'll be able to drop the field of 4 and the field of 5. And then the things that don't drop out are the things that you really need to focus on. You need to work those out. And as you do, as you're refining those, you drop out more of those. And what you're doing is you're clearing out the field of charge, your resistance to struggling. At one point, you can put the fight down. Now you take the charge out of the pleasure and the pain, and you can allow yourself to be in the full range of those without having to struggle or be hurt. And you can be in the fullness of that life force and just engaging with that. So that the central channel becomes the place to be. And that within that you're binding the pleasures and pains of life. Now, I'm going to say one last thing, maybe two, is I had this on teacher training last weekend. We were talking about this with another chakra. And one of the things that was said about coming into the central and the calmness is a person said, well, it might be very boring, and it was so honest and also so true, is because we can get caught up in the drama of things. We can get involved in the drama of life, and the drama of life can make things very interesting. But when we're in the struggle of that, the drama of life can also be very exhausting. Okay, so the drama is, for me, one way I understand it is the drama of playing out our struggles. But what about if we played out our connection? We amplified, we dramatized our connection. So we're in the connection of ourselves, but now you can still have your drama, but the drama doesn't have to come with the drama of the suffering. You can be in that creative self, that playful self, and be in the connection of it. So now think about it. You're going around the mundaneness of life, doing all the normal things you do in life, but yet you feel alive, you feel connected. You're in the essential and the intimacy of yourself, but then you're also in the playfulness, you're also in the curiosity, you're in the wit or the humor. You're in that spontaneous moment where you're just going with what happens, but you're in the connection of it rather than the struggle of it, and it's very playful. So you can still have your drama, so to speak, and you can live the drama of yourself, be in the fullness of your humanity, and be in the radiance of that. It's just coming from a place of connection, as opposed to the drama that plays out the suffering. So in that's not boring. That's actually it's fascinating. It's great fun. It's great fun as well. Yeah. So that's one of the things that people might be thinking, oh, this might end up being a bit boring. I might lose myself in it. I might lose the things I enjoy. No, you're just taking the suffering out of them. You can still be in the fullness of them. You just take the suffering and the hurt out. So if I asked you this, is in all of your life now, is if you didn't change one thing, didn't change anything, except you took the suffering out of it, how would you view your life? If you didn't change anything about it, you just took the suffering out of it, how would you view your life? And the view of your life with the suffering gone is you're viewing it from a different place. Nothing else has changed. But when you take the suffering out, the place you're viewing it from changes. And when you view it from that place of connection in yourself, and you're feeling the life force of yourself, and you're feeling the life force of your life, the view of it is very different than if you view it from a place of suffering and hurt and survival. So think about the value of, you don't have to change anything that's going on, but what you're doing is you're bringing yourself to a different place within yourself so that you can see the oneness, the connection of things rather than the separateness of things. So again, you can understand the value of this practice is that it's a bit like riding a bike. Once you get into this beautiful connection and you allow yourself to just be in it, is it takes on a life of its own. And then you just let it overflow and radiate more and more into your life. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed the practice today. Interesting conversation, always is. Next session is we'll start to layer in the 4 layers of consciousness, which is we're going to talk about now tapping into the deeper potentials within ourselves. So the unconscious mind is that place of absolute potential. So imagine tapping into your place of absolute potential, where your subconscious mind it treats everything as real. Now imagine that you centered yourself into the present moment, and rather than your subconscious mind, because it treats everything as real, if we focus on something that's not real, is your subconscious mind still going to treat it as real. That's why hypnosis is very powerful. It's why dreams are very powerful. It's why attachments can be very powerful. It's why illusion can be very powerful. It's because once our subconscious mind focuses on it, whether it's real or not, it will treat it as real. That's the power of the subconscious mind. So very important thing to do is to have our subconscious mind focused on something that's real rather than unreal. Now imagine tapping in your life force, tapping into the potential of it, coming into the fullness of that potential, just feeling it in you. What type of drive and the seed of your will, how powerful would your drive and the seed of your will be if you had the space that you tapped into the full of absolute potential? And then you took the power of your subconscious mind, which treats everything as real, and you focus your subconscious mind on the present moment and then on your life force within the present moment. Now think about your ability to actualize, is to actually be in the moment, to live the fullness of the moment, because your subconscious mind is treating the present moment and your life force as if it's real. And because it is real, it'll bring that to life. Understand that? And again, I know people can pull me in and go, well, everything that's temporary in life isn't real. There's a reality behind the veil. You pull the veil away and then there's real reality. Yes, I agree with you. There is the temporary life and then there's the permanent life. But the life we're living right now, that moment-to-moment experience as it's happening, it's from the foundation of reality. So in that moment, it's as real as reality itself. When you attune the two, when you align the two, and we can have that conversation later. Okay? So now in your conscious mind is when your conscious mind is fully in the moment, and your conscious mind is fully in the moment, engaged in your life force, and think about that radiant connection to the moment itself and to the moment that you're living, the fullness of it. And then the universal, the superconscious, is connecting into not just your life force, but the abundant life force that is life itself. And you're coming into the fullness of that experience. Okay? So now as we come into those beautiful tendencies and we start to balance out the tendencies, it allows us to draw deeper on our real deep well of life force. Is that drive, that seat of our will is there's immense power in it, immense potential. Is just to tap into that and start to bring that through us is a very powerful thing. Okay, and what we're doing in that is while we're activating the sacral chakra, that's how we start to draw the energy up. We start to bind the energy together, and then we start to draw up and tap into that deeper well of ourselves, that deeper source. Okay, so we'll have that conversation. Again, this is just a beginner's course. I've said this before, there's a beginner's course, there will be an intermediate, advanced, and a mastery course. So a lot of the conversations and practices we're having now is just setting the space up. So in this sacral course we'll probably have at least 35 to 40 hours of practice in this by the time we get through it all. And then each one of the chakras it will have that as well. And we start to learn them together more systematically, because again, the journey keeps going on. So we're just setting up the foundation for each chakra at the moment. But for now, thank you very much. A lot of hours, a lot of journey. I'm sure, isn't that the way you want it to be? Isn't that wonderful to be able to just tease all this stuff out and then just tease out little by little over a long period of time, and going on that journey of exploration within ourselves. Why not? Sure, what else will we be doing? So thank you very much. I'll see you next time.